Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing far better than I deserve. How about yourself?
Just the same, sir. How can I help?
Well, I am the owner-operator of a small commercial roofing company. I have 11 team members, and this year we're on track to do a little over $4 million in top-line sales, which is about 25% up from last year.
Good for you.
Thank you. I bought this company from my dad 9 years ago. He founded it almost 40 years ago. And I'm just trying to think ahead of my own exit and transition. And I've heard your advice a number of times of kind of owner financing the sale of a business where the new owner takes a minimal salary and gives all profits to the old owner to buy out. But my business is somewhat of a high liability business. There's a lot of liability involved. We do bonded jobs and things like that. I was just looking for some more tactical advice of how to actually go through that process of, when actual ownership would transfer, at what point in that process, and maybe how to mitigate some of those liabilities for both the exiting owner and the new owner.
Well, I mean, you've got to maintain the bonds or you don't get the jobs. And so, I would probably put in the documentation that if the new owner did not maintain the bonds, that they're in default so that you could come back in and take it over, because they're going to run it in the dirt. It's going to be worth nothing in 20 minutes, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, you got a pretty short fuse on that puppy. So, in order to not be in default, and if they're in default, the default mechanism and you'd basically be, in a sense, foreclosing on the business, although there's probably no real estate that you're foreclosing on, but you would be taking the business back over if they failed to keep bonds in place. So they need to give you proof of bond until they paid you out. And then the second thing is that they need to give you proof of liability insurance. And you probably carry some pretty decent limits on that, don't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Mainly injury, right?
Well,
your
or
workers' comp stuff is your workers' comp stuff's got to be rowdy.
Yeah. And then liability for buildings. We roof a lot of schools. We're over the top of computer labs, data centers. A water intrusion on something like that can be pretty costly.
Yeah. So what do you carry insurance to do that, cover that now?
I do, yes.
Okay.
We have some pretty significant liability insurance.
Yeah, I would think you would. That would make sense. And that's what I would do. And so I think maintaining that insurance as well is a mechanism. If they don't maintain it, it's a mechanism for default. Because those are key elements to the destruction of the value of the business itself, if you don't have those things in place. And so if you're going to cut corners and you're the new owner, those aren't two you can cut. Otherwise, I foreclose and take the business back.
Okay.
And that's, and also, what you and I are discussing here, I've never been in the roofing business, but just observing from the outside looking in, I've been around building my whole life, and I've built large commercial buildings and homes and so forth. And just observing all of that tells me that those two things they're permission to play. It's table stakes to have those two things in place, right? Bonding and insurance, liability insurance. So you don't get to play at, you can play small time out of the back of your truck, but if you want to contract a good sized job, you're going to have these two things, the liability to protect you and the bonding to protect it's a performance bond basically. And so, and so that's table stakes. And so if anybody's going to buy your thing and they don't have enough sophistication to understand that that's permission to play, then you probably don't want them as a buyer.
Yeah.
So it's a precursor to have a sophisticated enough buyer in the mix as well. So I'm just anything like that that's essential to the running of the business itself would be a mechanism for default, and you can come back in and take it over. But if you're passing this to family and you've been mentoring them for years, it's kind of a no-brainer. They should understand it, but you can put it in the documents if you want then as well.